They called her cursed. They called her monster. Tonight, she would prove them all wrong, or die trying. Poppy stood in chains before the Alpha King, her twisted form drawing gasps from the court. Half woman, half wolf, she was everything they feared. But when his 6 sisters began their nightly descent into death, dancing toward oblivion in a realm no one could reach, she offered what no one else dared: answers, her life for their truth. The king's cold eyes met hers, and for the first time in her wretched existence, someone actually listened. Stay until the end to see how the girl the world rejected became the queen who broke fate itself. Like this video if you believe intelligence beats cruelty, and comment what city you're watching from. The first time Poppy's stepmother tried to kill her, she was 7 years old. It started with a cup of tea. Honey sweetened, still steaming, placed beside her thin pallet in the attic with a smile that didn't reach her stepmother's eyes. Poppy remembered staring at that cup, her small hands wrapped around its warmth, feeling something twist in her gut that had nothing to do with hunger. "Drink up, dear," Elara had said, her voice syrup smooth. "You look so pale." Poppy hadn't touched it. She'd watched her stepmother's smile freeze, watched the woman's jaw tighten before she swept from the room. Later, Poppy poured the tea into the withered plant on her windowsill. By morning, the plant was dead, its leaves blackened and curled like burned paper. The attempts became more sophisticated after that. Tainted bread. A pillow held too long over her face during what should have been a comforting embrace. A loose stone at the top of the stairs that sent Poppy tumbling, breaking her wrist in 2 places. Each time, Poppy survived through pure stubbornness and the animal instinct that something wasn't right, that the woman who married her father wanted her gone. She never told anyone. Who would believe her? Elara was beloved in their small village of Thornwick, beautiful, gracious, charitable to everyone except the gangly, awkward stepdaughter who looked nothing like the golden child Elara brought with her. Celeste. Perfect, radiant Celeste with her honey-colored hair and laugh like bells. Celeste who could do no wrong, who drew admirers like moths to flame, who never had to sleep in the attic or wear clothes that didn't quite fit or wonder if dinner would include a side of poison. By the time Poppy turned 15, she'd stopped hoping things would change. Hope was a luxury for people who had futures. She had survival, and that would have to be enough. Then came the night everything shattered. Poppy woke to wrongness, the kind of wrongness that crawled under your skin and screamed that something terrible was happening, even if you couldn't name it. Her body felt like it was being torn apart from the inside, bones grinding against each other, skin stretching and reforming in ways that defied nature. She tried to scream, but what emerged was something between a howl and a sob. Her father burst through the attic door first, Elara close behind. The oil lamp in his hand illuminated the scene like a tableau from a nightmare. Poppy on the floor, her body contorting, fur sprouting along her arms, her face elongating into something that was neither fully human nor fully wolf. "What did you do?" her father breathed, horror etched across his features. "I didn't—" Poppy gasped, but her voice came out mangled, half words and animal sounds. "Please, she's cursed," Elara whispered, and there was something in her voice that Poppy would remember later. Not surprise. Satisfaction. "She's been cursed. Oh, Thomas, your daughter is cursed." "Your daughter, not our daughter, never our daughter." Poppy's father stepped back, his face pale. "How?" "Dark magic," Elara said, moving closer to him, away from Poppy's writhing form. "She must have dabbled in something forbidden. I warned you, Thomas. I told you she was strange, that she spent too much time alone in the woods." "I didn't!" Poppy tried to say, but the transformation was accelerating. Her hands curved into claws, her spine arched unnaturally. Through the haze of agony, she saw Celeste peering around the doorframe, her blue eyes wide. Not with horror, with something else, something that looked almost like pity, or maybe triumph. The transformation stopped before completion, leaving Poppy trapped in a half-state. Her body was still recognizably human in shape, but covered in dark fur. Her face had elongated, her teeth sharp, her eyes more wolf than woman. When she finally managed to stand, she caught sight of herself in the small, cracked mirror on her wall. The creature staring back was the stuff of children's nightmares. "Get it out," Elara said softly. "Thomas, you have to get it out of this house. Think of Celeste, Think of what the neighbors will say. Will it, not even her anymore. Poppy's father stood frozen, warring emotions playing across his face. Poppy wanted to beg, to plead, to remind him that she was his daughter, that he used to call her his little wildflower, that he once loved her. But when she opened her mouth, only a low whine emerged. "The old gamekeeper's cottage," he finally said, his voice hollow, "at the edge of the woods. It can stay there." Relief and devastation warred in Poppy's chest. At least he wasn't throwing her out completely. At least, no one can know she's there, Elara added quickly. No one can know she's ours, for Celeste's sake. You understand, don't you, Thomas? He nodded slowly, and something inside Poppy broke that had nothing to do with curses or transformations. They moved her in the dead of night. Her father wouldn't look at her, wouldn't speak to her. He left her in the cottage with a bag of old clothes and a hunting knife, then turned and walked away without a word. Poppy spent the first week trying to reverse the curse. She tried every folk remedy she could remember, every prayer, every bargain, with forces she didn't believe in. Nothing worked. The half-state remained, permanent and unbreakable. The second week, she tried to die. She stood at the edge of the ravine near the cottage, looking down at the rocks below, and seriously considered jumping. It would be quick. It would be over. No more pain, no more fear, no more being a monster. But when she closed her eyes, all she could see was Elara's face. That moment of satisfaction, that flash of something that looked too much like planned success. Poppy stepped back from the edge. If Elara wanted her gone, really, truly gone, then there was more to this curse than simple misfortune. And if there was more to it, then maybe there was a way to undo it. She just had to survive long enough to find out how. The third week, she started learning to live with what she'd become. The curse brought changes beyond appearance. Her senses sharpened to predatory levels. She could hear a rabbit's heartbeat from 50 yards away, could smell rain coming hours before it arrived, could see in darkness as clearly as daylight. Her strength had increased too. She could lift fallen logs that would have required 3 grown men, could run for hours without tiring. The isolation was harder than the physical changes. Thornwick wasn't large and news traveled fast in small villages. Within days, everyone knew that Thomas the merchant's daughter had been cursed, transformed into a monster, hidden away in shame. The story grew with each telling. By the time it circulated back to Poppy through whispers she overheard while hunting at night, she'd supposedly murdered a witch, defiled a sacred grove, and made a pact with demons. None of it was true. All of it stuck. The few times she ventured near the village, children screamed and ran. Adults grabbed pitchforks and torches. Once old Mrs. Brennan, who used to slip Poppy extra apples at market, threw a rock that caught her above the eye, leaving a scar that never quite healed. So Poppy stopped trying. She kept to the woods, to the shadows, to the thin existence of someone the world had decided didn't deserve to be seen. Months bled into years. Poppy turned 16, then 17, then 18, marking time by seasons and the slow accumulation of survival skills. She became an expert hunter, though she never quite got used to the taste of raw meat that her transformed body craved. She learned which plants were edible, which could be used for medicine, how to set snares and read weather patterns and start fires in the rain. She also learned how to be invisible, how to move through the forest without leaving tracks, how to observe Thornwick from a distance, watching the life she'd been excluded from continue without her. She saw Celeste grow into a beauty who had suitors lining up at the door, saw her father's business prosper, saw Elara become the most influential woman in Thornwick, her charity work and gracious manner earning her universal admiration. No one asked about Thomas's first daughter anymore. It was like Poppy had never existed. That should have been the end of her story. Monster in the woods. Forgotten daughter. Cautionary tale about the dangers of whatever fictional sin the villagers had decided she'd committed. But fate, Poppy learned, had a sick sense of humor. The summons came on a Tuesday. Poppy was checking her snares when she heard the horses. 3 riders, moving fast through the forest toward her cottage. She froze, every instinct screaming at her to run, to hide, to become invisible the way she'd learned. But something stopped her. Maybe curiosity. Maybe exhaustion with running. Maybe the small, stubborn part of her that refused to believe she deserved to spend the rest of her life in shadows. She waited. The riders were royal guards, their armor bearing the crest of King Aldrich, the Alpha King who ruled the northern territories with an iron fist and a reputation for ruthlessness. Poppy had never seen them this far from the capital, never had reason to care about royal business. Until they surrounded her cottage and the captain dismounted, pulling out a scroll with a seal that looked official and terrifying. "Poppy Thornwick?" His voice was clipped, military precise. She nodded warily, her hand moving to the knife at her belt. "You are hereby summoned to stand before King Aldrich on charges of witchcraft, attempted murder, and conspiracy against the crown." The words hit like a physical blow. "What? I've never even been to the capital. I don't know anything about—" "Someone's accused you," another guard cut in, his face twisted with disgust as he looked at her. "That's all that matters. You come willingly, or we drag you. Choose." Poppy's mind raced. Accused? By whom? For what? She'd been hiding in the woods for 3 years, hadn't interacted with anyone except the occasional hunter she scared off accidentally. Unless someone wanted to make sure she stayed gone permanently. "Who accused me?" she demanded. The captain's expression didn't change. "That information will be provided at trial. Now, your choice." She could run. Her transformed body was faster than horses in the forest. She knew these woods better than anyone. She could disappear so completely they'd never find her. But if she ran, she'd prove whatever accusations they'd leveled against her. She'd spend the rest of her life being hunted instead of just hidden. And some small, angry part of her was tired of being treated like she deserved this existence. "I'll come," she said quietly, "but I'm innocent." The guard who'd spoken before laughed, short and bitter. "Sure you are. They all are." They bound her wrists in iron chains that bit into her fur-covered skin. The metal burned, whether from some enchantment or just her body's reaction to captivity, Poppy couldn't tell. They didn't offer her a horse, forcing her to walk between the riders as they headed toward the capital. It took 2 days of brutal travel. The guards rotated shifts, but never rested long enough for Poppy to sleep. Whenever she stumbled, they jerked the chains forward, laughing when she fell. They called her monster, cursed thing, abomination. One of them suggested they just kill her on the road and save everyone the trouble. The captain overruled him, but only barely. Poppy focused on putting one foot in front of the other, on breathing, on not giving them the satisfaction of seeing her break. She'd survived Alara's poison. She'd survived the curse. She'd survived 3 years alone in the wilderness. She could survive this too. The capital of Silvercrest rose from the landscape like a crown of stone and steel. Massive walls surrounded the city, guard towers at every corner. The palace itself dominated the skyline, all sharp angles and defensive architecture. This was a fortress, not a fairy tale castle. A place built for war and rule, not beauty. They entered through a side gate, avoiding the main streets. Poppy caught glimpses of the city through narrow alleyways, shops and taverns, street vendors and children playing, normal people living normal lives while she was paraded past in chains like a criminal. The palace dungeons were exactly as unpleasant as expected. Dark, damp, smelling of despair and old blood. They threw her in a cell barely large enough to lie down in, the iron door slamming shut with a finality that echoed in her bones. Poppy sank onto the cold stone floor and waited. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time lost meaning in the darkness. Guards brought stale bread and water that tasted of rust. No one spoke to her. No one told her what was happening or when her trial would be. The isolation should have been familiar. After 3 years alone, this should have been nothing. But somehow, being alone by choice and being alone in a cage were 2 entirely different hells. Finally, footsteps approached. Not the heavy tread of guards, but something lighter, more purposeful. A key turned in the lock, and the cell door opened to reveal a woman in fine clothing, her dark hair streaked with silver, her eyes sharp and assessing. "Well," she said, studying Poppy with the detached interest of someone examining an unusual insect, "you're definitely cursed. The question is whether you're also guilty." "I'm not," Poppy said hoarsely. "I don't even know what I'm accused of." The woman arched an eyebrow. "Really? No one told you. How inefficient. She pulled a piece of parchment from her sleeve, scanning it quickly. You stand accused of placing a curse on the royal princesses, all 6 of them. They dance themselves to exhaustion every night, wear through iron-soled shoes, and grow weaker by the day. Multiple witnesses have testified to seeing a creature matching your description near the palace on the nights the curse began. Poppy's blood went cold. That's impossible. I've never been to the palace. I've been living in a cottage in the woods near Thornwick for 3 years. Ask anyone. She stopped. Because who was there to ask? Who would vouch for the monster in the woods? Convenient, the woman said dryly. No alibi, no witnesses, just your word against multiple testimonies from respected citizens. Who testified? Poppy demanded. Who would even know what I look like? I don't go near people. That, the woman said, is an excellent question, one you'll have the opportunity to ask tomorrow at your trial. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I don't think you did it. The magic doesn't smell right, but what I think doesn't matter. What matters is what the king believes, and right now he believes his sisters are dying and someone needs to pay for it. Wait, Poppy called as the woman started to close the door. Who are you? Lady Morgana, the king's advisor on matters of magic and curses. I'm the one who'll be determining whether you live or die. She offered a thin smile. Sleep well. The door clanged shut, leaving Poppy alone with her thoughts and rising panic. Someone had set her up. Someone who knew what she looked like, who knew where she lived, who wanted her blamed for a crime she didn't commit. The list of people who fit that description was very, very short. Poppy leaned back against the cold stone wall and laughed, the sound coming out broken and bitter. After 3 years of hiding, of surviving, of trying to just exist without bothering anyone, this was how it ended. Framed for a crime she didn't commit, about to be executed for a curse she didn't cast. Unless she could prove her innocence. Unless she could figure out who really cursed the princesses and why. Unless she could do the impossible. Again. The next morning, at least Poppy assumed it was morning based on the change in guard shifts, they came for her. New chains, heavier than before, enchanted with runes that made her skin burn. 4 guards this time, weapons drawn, as if she might suddenly transform into something even more monstrous in attack. She didn't. She just walked, head high, refusing to give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. The throne room was massive, designed to intimidate. Vaulted ceilings, pillars carved with battle scenes, tapestries depicting the kingdom's bloody history. At the far end, elevated on a dais of black stone, sat the throne itself, and on it, the Alpha King. Aldrich was younger than Poppy expected, maybe 30, with dark hair and eyes the color of winter ice. He wore power like a second skin, radiating authority and barely controlled violence. This was a man who'd earned his crown through strength and held it through fear. Standing in formation behind the throne were 6 women in varying stages of exhaustion, the princesses. Sisters sharing the same dark hair and aristocratic features as their brother, but where he radiated power, they looked like ghosts. Pale skin, dark circles under their eyes, moving with the careful deliberation of people whose bodies were failing them. The youngest couldn't have been more than 16. The oldest, maybe 25. All of them were dying. Poppy felt something twist in her chest that had nothing to do with self-preservation. Whatever curse was killing them, it was cruel and slow. A punishment designed to cause maximum suffering. Poppy Thornwick, Aldrich's voice cut through the room like a blade. You stand accused of witchcraft and attempted murder of the royal family. How do you plead? Not guilty, Poppy said, and was proud that her voice didn't shake. I've never practiced magic. I've never been to the capital before 2 days ago. I'm cursed, not a curse caster. Aldrich leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Then explain how multiple witnesses saw a creature matching your exact description lurking near the palace on the nights the curse began. I can't explain it, Poppy admitted, because I wasn't here, but someone wants you to think I was. Convenient. The king's tone could have frozen fire. Tell me, creature, what proof do you offer of your innocence? None, Poppy said bluntly. I lived alone. I had no contact with anyone. My word is all I have. Your word is worth less than nothing. Then kill me, Poppy shot back, anger overriding common sense. If you've already decided I'm guilty, if my word means nothing, then stop wasting time with a trial and just execute me now. Gasps echoed through the court. The guards' hands moved to their weapons. But Aldrich held up one hand, stopping them. His expression hadn't changed, but something flickered in those cold eyes. Interest, maybe, or recognition of something familiar. You have no fear, he observed. I have plenty of fear, Poppy corrected. I'm just tired of running from it. If I'm going to die, I'd rather do it on my feet than on my knees. How noble, someone sneered from the crowd. Poppy turned to see a man in elaborate robes, his beard oiled and perfumed, looking at her with undisguised contempt. The monster pretends to have dignity. Lord Castellan, Aldrich said mildly, you'll speak when spoken to. The rebuke was soft but effective. The man's face flushed, but he fell silent. Aldrich returned his attention to Poppy. You claim you're innocent, that someone framed you. Do you have any proof of this accusation? Any idea who might want to see you blamed? Poppy hesitated. Accusing Alara without evidence would make her sound desperate and vindictive. But what choice did she have? My stepmother, she said quietly. Alara Thornwick. She's tried to kill me before, multiple times. The curse that transformed me. I think she was behind it. You think? Aldrich's tone was skeptical. I was 7 when she married my father. I was 15 when I was cursed. In those 8 years, she tried to poison me at least 6 times, orchestrated several accidents, and generally made it clear she wanted me dead. When the curse happened, she seemed satisfied, not surprised, and she was the one who insisted I be hidden away, that no one could know I existed. A stepmother's cruelty. Lady Morgana spoke up from her position near the throne. Tragic but hardly proof of magical conspiracy. Do you have any evidence linking her to the princess's curse specifically? No, Poppy admitted, but nothing, Aldrich cut her off. Accusations without proof are meaningless. You've offered no defense, no alibi, no evidence of your innocence. On the other hand, we have multiple witnesses who saw a creature like you near the palace, and the timing matches the curse's inception exactly. Then let me prove it, Poppy said desperately. The words came out before she could think them through, driven by pure survival instinct. Let me find out who really cursed them. If I can break the curse, save your sisters, you'll know I'm innocent. The throne room went silent. Aldrich stared at her, his expression unreadable. Dozens of the kingdom's most powerful mages have tried to break this curse. What makes you think a cursed creature living in the woods could succeed where they failed? Because I have nothing to lose, Poppy said simply. Your mages have reputations, careers, fears about what failure might cost them. I'm already condemned. The worst that happens is I die trying instead of dying in a cell. But if I succeed, if I save them, then you know I'm innocent. And maybe, just maybe, I get to live. It was a desperate gamble, insane even, but Poppy had learned years ago that sometimes desperation was the only card worth playing. Aldrich was quiet for a long moment, studying her with those cold, calculating eyes. Poppy forced herself to meet his gaze, to not look away, to show him that whatever else she wasn't weak. 3 days, he finally said. You have 3 days to identify the curse and break it. You'll be given access to the princesses, to the palace, to whatever resources you need. But you'll be watched at all times, and if you attempt to escape or harm anyone, you'll be executed immediately. Understood? Understood, Poppy breathed. And if you fail, Aldrich continued, his voice dropping to something dangerous and cold, your death won't be quick. I'll make sure of that. Fair enough, Poppy said, even though her heart was hammering against her ribs. I won't fail. We'll see, Aldrich said. He gestured to the guards. Take her to chambers near the princess's wing. Under guard. Someone bring Lady Morgana's notes on the curse. And someone... He paused, something that might have been dark humor crossing his face. Someone find this creature some decent clothes. If she's going to save my sisters or die trying, she might as well look presentable doing it. As the guards led her away, Poppy caught sight of the princesses again. 6 pairs of eyes watched her go. expressions ranging from hope to skepticism to exhaustion too deep for emotion. She'd just promised to save them, to break a curse that the kingdom's most powerful magic users couldn't touch, to prove her innocence and her worth in 3 days or die. It should have been terrifying. It should have felt impossible. But as Poppy was led through the palace halls, past tapestries and guards and the trappings of power she'd never experienced, all she felt was a strange, fierce determination. She'd survived Alara's poison. She'd survived the curse that made her a monster. She'd survived 3 years alone in the wilderness and 2 days of brutal travel in chains. She wasn't going to die in a palace. She was going to solve this mystery, save those princesses, and prove that the girl the world rejected was stronger than anyone imagined. Starting now, the chambers they assigned her were better than any place Poppy had slept in years, which wasn't saying much considering her recent accommodations had been a dungeon cell, and before that, a rotting gamekeeper's cottage. The room had an actual bed with sheets, a window that wasn't barred, and a basin of clean water. It also had 2 guards stationed outside the door and another watching from the hallway window, crossbows loaded. Not exactly a vote of confidence. A servant girl arrived with clothes, practical riding pants and a tunic, nothing fancy, but clean and whole. The girl left them on the bed without making eye contact, practically running from the room. Poppy couldn't blame her. Even cleaned up, she was still a monster. The fur, the elongated features, the claws, those didn't wash away. She changed quickly, the new clothes feeling strange against her skin. Foreign, like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. A sharp knock preceded Lady Morgana's entrance. The older woman carried a leather-bound journal, thick with notes, and stuffed with loose parchments. She didn't ask permission to enter, just swept in and deposited the journal on the small desk with a heavy thud. "Everything we know about the curse," Morgana said without preamble. Which, unfortunately, isn't much. The princesses began exhibiting symptoms 4 months ago. Every night, they retire to their chambers. Every morning, they're found exhausted, their shoes worn through, their feet bleeding. They have no memory of leaving their rooms, no awareness of dancing, nothing. But the evidence is undeniable. Poppy flipped through the journal, scanning the cramped handwriting and detailed diagrams. "You've tried tracking spells. Obviously, they slide off like water. Whatever magic is at work here, it's old and sophisticated, far beyond typical curse work." Morgana's eyes narrowed. "Which is why I find it highly unlikely that you're responsible. No offense, but cursing yourself into that form doesn't exactly scream master practitioner." "None taken," Poppy said dryly. "So you believe I'm innocent?" "I believe you're not the one who cast the curse on the princesses. Whether you're innocent of other crimes remains to be seen." Morgana pulled out a chair and sat, her posture perfect despite the late hour. "Tell me about your own curse, the transformation. When did it happen? What do you remember?" Poppy hesitated. She'd spent 3 years not talking about that night, pushing it down, trying to forget. But if Morgana could help... "I was 15. I woke up feeling like my body was tearing apart from the inside. The transformation took maybe 10 minutes, but it felt like hours. When it was over, I was like this, stuck halfway." Painful transformations usually indicate forced magic, something imposed rather than chosen. Morgana made a note. "And you're certain your stepmother was involved?" "I can't prove it, but she tried to kill me 6 times before the curse, and after." Poppy's jaw tightened. "After, she looked satisfied. Not surprised. She wanted me gone, and the curse gave her the perfect excuse." "Interesting. And now you're accused of cursing the princesses with similar timing to when multiple witnesses supposedly saw a creature like you." Morgana tapped her pen against the journal. "Someone's building a pattern, making sure all the pieces point to you." "Alara is," Poppy said. "It has to be." "Perhaps. But why? What does she gain from the princesses' deaths? Your stepmother lives in a small village. She has no connection to the royal family, no obvious motive." Morgana stood, smoothing her skirts. "I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying you need evidence, and you need it in 3 days. The king wasn't exaggerating about your execution. He's very creative when he's angry." "Comforting," Poppy muttered. "I'm not here to comfort you. I'm here to see if you're worth saving." Morgana moved to the door, then paused. The princesses will receive you tomorrow morning. Try not to terrify them. They're fragile enough as it is. She left, and Poppy was alone with the journal and her thoughts. She spent the night reading. Every observation, every failed attempt to break the curse, every theory that led nowhere. By dawn, her eyes burned and her head ached, but she had the shape of something. Not a solution, but a direction. The curse wasn't affecting the princesses during the day, only at night, and they had no memory of it, which suggested either sleep magic or something that bypassed conscious awareness entirely. The worn shoes and bleeding feet were physical evidence of something real happening, not just an illusion. They were going somewhere, dancing somewhere. But where? A different servant brought breakfast, plain bread and cheese, which Poppy wolfed down. She hadn't realized how hungry she was until food appeared. 3 years in the woods had taught her to eat when she could, fast when she couldn't. The guards came for her mid-morning, different ones this time, looking no more comfortable with her presence than their predecessors. They led her through the palace, up spiraling staircases and down long corridors lined with portraits of dead kings who stared disapprovingly at the cursed creature walking beneath them. The princess's wing was in the east tower, furthest from the main palace, isolated. Whether for their protection or everyone else's, Poppy couldn't tell. The youngest princess answered the door herself. Up close, she looked even worse than in the throne room, skin pale as parchment, dark circles so pronounced they looked like bruises, hands trembling slightly as she held the door. "You're the one who's supposed to save us," she said. Not a question. Her voice was soft, musical even in exhaustion. "I'm Arya. Come in, I guess." The room beyond was larger than Poppy's entire cottage had been, decorated in soft blues and silvers. 5 other women were scattered throughout, some sitting, some lying down, all radiating the same bone-deep exhaustion as Arya. 6 pairs of eyes tracked Poppy's entrance with varying degrees of hope and skepticism. "This is ridiculous," the oldest princess said from her position on a settee. She had Aldrich's sharp features and apparently his temperament. "We're supposed to trust a cursed creature? She probably cast the spell to begin with." "Seraphina," another princess chided gently. She was maybe 20, with softer features and kind eyes. "Father said—" "Father is desperate," Seraphina cut her off. "We're dying, and he's grasping at straws. This thing is just another failed attempt." "I have a name," Poppy said quietly. "It's Poppy, and I didn't curse you, but someone did, and I'm going to find out who." "How?" Seraphina demanded. "What makes you qualified?" "I survived being poisoned 6 times before I was 15. I survived a curse that should have killed me. I survived 3 years alone in the wilderness with everyone hunting me." Poppy met Seraphina's gaze steadily. "I'm qualified because I know what it's like when someone wants you dead, and I know how to stay alive anyway. That enough for you?" Silence. Then Arya laughed, the sound startling in the quiet room. "I like her." "You like everyone," Seraphina muttered, but some of the hostility had drained from her expression. The kind-eyed princess stood and offered her hand. "I'm Selena. That's Seraphina, Arya, Luna, Marina, and Eloise." She gestured to each in turn. "We're grateful for your help, even if some of us are terrible at showing it." Poppy shook her hand carefully, conscious of her claws. "Tell me everything, from the beginning. When did this start?" They settled in, and the story emerged in pieces. 4 months ago, they'd all woken exhausted. Their shoes, good leather shoes that should have lasted years, were worn completely through, soles destroyed. At first, they thought it was some kind of elaborate prank, but it kept happening, every night, without fail. "We tried staying awake," Luna said. She was quiet, probably 17, with an artist's ink-stained fingers. "Didn't matter. 1 minute you're fighting sleep, the next it's dawn and you feel like you've run a marathon." "We tried locking the doors," Marina added. She and Luna were clearly twins, similar features, but Marina's fingers were clean and her posture more rigid. "Military training? Maybe." "Bolting them from inside didn't work. We still end up exhausted, still wake up with ruined shoes." "Our brother posted guards outside our rooms," Eloise said. She was the second youngest, maybe 18, with an intensity that reminded Poppy of Aldrich. They swear we never left, but we must have because she pulled up her skirt slightly, revealing feet wrapped in bandages, some spots seeping through with blood. Poppy knelt beside her, examining the injuries carefully. The damage was consistent with hours of dancing on hard surfaces. Not walking, not running, dancing. The blisters and cuts were in specific patterns, weight distributed in ways that matched formal dance movements. "You're really dancing," Poppy said slowly. "Somewhere. For hours. But you don't remember it, and the guards don't see you leave." "Brilliant deduction," Serafina said sarcastically. "We'd never figured that out ourselves." "Sarah," Selena warned. "It's fine," Poppy said, standing. "She's scared and dying. Sarcasm's cheaper than tears." She turned back to Serafina. "Here's what I don't understand. Why dancing? Curses are usually more direct, wasting sickness, madness, sleep that never ends. But this? Making you dance every night until you're exhausted? That's specific, personal. Someone's making a point." "What point?" Arya asked. "I don't know yet, but curses always have logic, even when they're cruel. Figure out the logic. You figure out who cast it and why." Poppy paced the room, thinking. "Can I see your bedchambers, where you sleep?" They showed her. 6 identical rooms branching off from the main sitting area, each decorated to the princess's taste, but structurally the same. Poppy examined every inch, floors, walls, windows, furniture, looking for hidden doors, magical symbols, anything that might explain how they were being transported. Nothing. She was inspecting Arya's wardrobe when she noticed it, a faint shimmer around the bed, visible only from certain angles in specific light. Not quite invisible, not quite there. "Morgana!" Poppy called to the guards outside. "Get Lady Morgana! Now!" The older woman arrived quickly, her sharp eyes immediately catching what Poppy had found. She pulled out a small crystal on a chain, holding it near the shimmer. The crystal glowed faintly green. "Portal magic," Morgana breathed. "Very old, very subtle. I didn't detect it before because it's dormant during the day. But at night it activates and takes them somewhere," Poppy finished. "Can you trace where?" "No. Portal magic this sophisticated is designed to be untraceable, but if you went through..." Morgana looked at Poppy speculatively. "If someone went through while it was active, they could follow the princesses, see where they're going." "Absolutely not," Serafina said immediately. "We're not sending her through some unknown portal. She could be working with whoever cursed us." "If I was working with them, why would I point out the portal?" Poppy asked reasonably. "To gain our trust, to get inside our defenses." Serafina crossed her arms. "I don't trust you." "Good," Poppy said. "Don't, but I'm still the best chance you've got." She turned to Morgana. "Tonight. I'll go through when it activates. Follow them wherever they're going." "That's insane," Marina said. "You have no idea what's on the other side." "No," Poppy agreed. "But sitting here debating it won't save your lives. I have 3 days. I'm not wasting one of them on fear." Arya moved to stand beside Poppy, swaying slightly with exhaustion. "I think she should do it. What's the worst that happens? She dies? We're already dying. At least this way, someone might find out why." "Arya!" Selena gasped. "What?" "It's true." Arya's smile was tired but genuine. "I'm voting yes. Who else?" Slowly, reluctantly, hands rose. Even Serafina, though she looked furious about it. "It's settled then," Morgana said. "Tonight, you follow them through the portal. I'll monitor from this side. If you're not back by dawn..." She didn't finish the sentence. "I'll be back," Poppy said with more confidence than she felt. The day crawled by. Poppy tried to rest, knowing she'd need her strength, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept spinning through possibilities, scenarios, dangers. She'd fought wolves, bears, desperate men in the woods, but she'd never faced magic deliberately designed to kill. This was different. This was walking into a trap with her eyes open. As sunset approached, the princesses grew increasingly anxious. They'd been living this nightmare for 4 months, but knowing someone would finally witness it finally see what was happening to them, changed something, made it more real somehow. Poppy positioned herself under Arya's bed as darkness fell, the portal shimmer barely visible above her. Morgana sat in the corner with her crystals and instruments, monitoring magical activity. The princesses settled into their beds, trying to sleep normally even though they knew what was coming. "Thank you," Arya whispered into the darkness, "even if this doesn't work. Thank you for trying." Poppy didn't answer. Couldn't think of anything adequate to say. Around midnight, the air changed. Pressure built like before a storm, making Poppy's fur stand on end. The shimmer above her intensified, becoming a swirling vortex of silver and shadow. And then, as one, all 6 princesses sat up. Their eyes were open but unseen, moving with eerie synchronization. They stood, crossed to their wardrobes, and pulled out elaborate ball gowns in deep jewel tones. They dressed themselves with mechanical precision, laced up dancing shoes that gleamed like they'd been forged from starlight. Then they walked toward the portal. Poppy waited until all 6 had stepped through before following. The transition was nauseating, like being turned inside out and reassembled wrong. Colors inverted, sounds became textures, time stretched and compressed simultaneously. When reality solidified again, Poppy found herself somewhere impossible. The chamber was vast, carved from what looked like living crystal that pulsed with inner light. Columns of silver and gold twisted toward a ceiling lost in shadows. The floor was polished obsidian that reflected everything in distorted, dreamlike ways. And in the center, a ballroom. The princesses were dancing, not alone. They had partners. Men who looked almost human, but not quite. Too beautiful, too sharp, movements too fluid. Fae, Poppy realized with growing dread. This was a Fae realm. Music filled the air, though Poppy couldn't identify the source. It was beautiful and terrible, the kind of music that got into your bones and made you want to dance until your feet bled and your heart stopped. The princesses danced with expressions of desperate joy, spinning and twirling with partners who smiled like predators. This wasn't celebration, it was consumption. The Fae were feeding on something, energy, life force, the princess's vitality being drained with every step. Poppy pressed herself against a pillar, trying to remain unseen. She needed to understand what was happening, who was orchestrating this before she could— "Well, well," a voice said directly behind her. "What do we have here? An uninvited guest." Poppy spun, claws out, but she was already too slow. The Fae man, because there was no mistaking him for human, caught her wrist with casual strength that made her earlier assessment of being stronger than normal humans laughably inadequate. He was tall, with silver hair that fell past his shoulders and eyes like molten gold. Beautiful in the way that poisonous things are beautiful, attractive and lethal in equal measure. "Let me go, Poppy growled. "Oh, I don't think so." He examined her with interest that made her skin crawl. "You're not one of the princesses. You're something else entirely. Cursed, I think. How delightful." Other Fae were noticing now, pausing in their dancing to observe. The princesses continued their mechanical movements, oblivious to anything beyond the music and the steps. "I am Lord Fenric," the silver-haired Fae said, his grip shifting to her throat, not quite choking, but making it clear he could. "And you, little beast, are trespassing in my realm. The penalty for that is death, unless—" his smile widened, "unless you can offer me something more interesting than your life." Poppy's mind raced. She was outmatched physically, outnumbered, in a realm where the rules of reality didn't apply. Fighting was suicide. Running was impossible. That left only one option. "A wager," she said, the words coming out strangled but clear. "I challenge you to a wager." Fenric's eyes lit up with genuine delight. "Oh, how bold! What makes you think I'd accept?" "Because Fae can't resist a good game," Poppy said, gambling on every folktale she'd ever heard. "And because I'm offering you something you want, a challenge. When was the last time someone surprised you? When was the last time you didn't know how a game would end?" His grip loosened slightly. "What are the terms?" 3 trials, Poppy said, making it up as she went. "Your design. If I fail, I'm yours to do with as you please. But if I succeed, you release the princesses from your curse and send us all back to the mortal realm, unharmed. And what's to stop me from simply killing you now and continuing as before? Boredom, Poppy said bluntly. You've been draining those princesses for 4 months. That game's almost over. They're nearly dead. What then? You find new victims, start again, same pattern, same ending. But this? Me? I'm different. I'm unexpected. And I'm offering you genuine entertainment. Fenric was silent, considering. The other Fae had gathered closer, listening. Poppy could feel their hunger, their interest. They were predators who'd grown tired of easy prey. 3 trials, Fenric finally said. I will design each to test a different aspect of your nature. Fail anyone, and you belong to me. Your life, your soul, your service, everything. Succeed in all 3, and the princesses go free. He leaned closer, his breath cold against her skin. But know this, little beast. I am very, very good at games, and I've never lost one yet. First time for everything, Poppy said, hoping her voice didn't betray her terror. Fenric laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Oh, I'm going to enjoy this. Very well. I accept your wager. He released her, stepping back with a theatrical bow. Let us begin. The first trial is simple, survive until dawn. But you see, in my realm, dawn only comes when I permit it. And tonight, I'm in no hurry. The ballroom floor opened beneath Poppy's feet, and she was falling into darkness that had teeth and hunger and no bottom she could see. Poppy hit water hard enough to knock the air from her lungs. Not water, something thicker, colder, that burned like liquid ice against her skin. She kicked instinctively, breaking the surface with a gasp that seared her throat. The chamber she'd fallen into was smaller than the ballroom, lit by phosphorescent fungi clinging to walls that seemed to breathe. The liquid she floated in glowed faintly green, and things moved beneath the surface, things with too many teeth. First trial? Fenric's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Survive until dawn. I should mention those creatures down there. They haven't fed in decades, and they're very, very hungry. Something brushed Poppy's leg. She jerked away, swimming toward the nearest wall. The stone was slick, offering no handholds. She scrabbled at it anyway, claws scraping uselessly against the smooth surface. A shape rose from the depths, serpentine, scaled, with eyes that reflected her terror back at her. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Poppy dove sideways as it lunged. The creature's jaws snapped shut inches from where her head had been, the sound like breaking bones. She surfaced on the opposite side of the chamber, lungs screaming for air, and spotted it, a ledge, maybe 10 feet up the wall. Too high to reach from the water, but there were mushrooms growing in a rough line leading up to it, if she could climb fast enough. Another creature surfaced, then another, 5 total, circling her with predatory patience. They were toying with her, waiting to see which way she'd run. Poppy didn't give them the satisfaction of running. She swam directly at the nearest one, fast and low. It reared back in surprise. Prey wasn't supposed to attack, and in that split second of confusion, Poppy was past it, hitting the wall with enough momentum to grab the lowest mushroom. It squelched under her grip but held. She pulled herself up, reaching for the next one. Behind her, the creatures were recovering from their shock, churning the water into froth as they converged on the wall. The second mushroom tore free as Poppy's weight hit it. She fell, caught herself on the first one with her claws, the sudden jerk nearly dislocating her shoulder. Below, jaws snapped at her dangling feet. She swung herself sideways, grabbing a different mushroom, testing it before committing her full weight. This one held. She climbed, ignoring the burning in her muscles, the way her wet fur made everything heavier. Up, up, one handhold at a time, while below the creatures writhed and snapped and waited for her to fall. Poppy hauled herself onto the ledge just as the largest creature launched itself from the water, its momentum carrying it halfway up the wall before gravity reclaimed it. Its teeth scraped the stone where her foot had been a heartbeat before. The ledge was narrow, maybe 3 feet deep, but solid. Poppy pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard, watching the creatures circle below. Not bad, Fenric's voice purred. You're faster than you look. But the trial isn't surviving the first 5 minutes. It's surviving until dawn. And I'm thinking, dawn should come around, 3 days from now? 3 days. On a ledge barely wide enough to sit on, with no food, no water, and monsters waiting below for her to pass out from exhaustion and fall. Poppy laughed. It came out harsh and slightly hysterical, echoing off the breathing walls. Something funny? Fenric sounded genuinely curious. I've survived worse, Poppy said, and meant it. You think 3 days without food will kill me? I went a week once, in winter, when the hunting was bad. You think monsters will? I've been hunted by humans who thought I was an abomination. You think isolation will break me? Her voice hardened. I spent 3 years alone because everyone I knew decided I didn't deserve to exist. 3 days on a ledge, that's nothing. Silence. Then Fenric materialized on the ledge beside her, sitting cross-legged as if they were having tea instead of negotiating her survival. Up close, his beauty was almost painful to look at. Features too perfect, too symmetrical, like someone had crafted the ideal face without understanding what made faces human. You're angry, he observed. I'm practical. No, you're angry. He tilted his head, studying her. At the world, at the people who rejected you, at the stepmother who tried to kill you, at fate itself for cursing you into this shape. He smiled. I can taste it on you, rage like fine wine, aged and complex. Then you should know I'm too stubborn to die easily. Oh, I'm counting on it. Breaking someone strong is so much more satisfying than breaking someone already damaged. He reached out as if to touch her face, and Poppy snapped her teeth at him. He pulled back, laughing. Yes, exactly that. You still have fight in you. Despite everything, you refuse to lie down and accept your fate. Is there a point to this? The point, Fenric said, standing in one fluid motion, is that your anger makes you predictable. You'll endure this trial through sheer spite. So let me make it more interesting. He gestured, and the wall behind Poppy rippled. An opening appeared, leading to darkness that smelled of earth and growing things. A tunnel, Fenric explained. It leads to a garden. In that garden, there's a fountain with water that can reverse any curse. Drink from it, and you'll be human again. Beautiful, whole, everything you were meant to be before your stepmother poisoned your life. Poppy's heart stopped. Human. She could be human again. No more fur, no more claws, no more children screaming at the sight of her. She could go home, could have a life, could... What's the catch? She asked, voice flat. Smart girl. The catch is this. The moment you enter that tunnel, the trial ends. You forfeit. The princesses remain cursed. You become mine. And whatever fate I design for you will make this ledge look like paradise. His golden eyes gleamed. But you'll be human when you suffer it. Isn't that worth it? To finally be yourself again? It was a test. Poppy understood that much. Not about survival, about choice, about what she valued more. Her freedom from the curse that made her a monster, or the lives of 6 women she barely knew. No, she said. Fenric's expression didn't change. No? I didn't come here to save myself. I came here to save them. Poppy gestured toward where the ballroom must be, somewhere above. I've lived 3 years as a monster. I can live 300 more if I have to. But those princesses? They don't deserve to die because I wanted to be pretty again. How noble, Fenric said, but there was something in his voice, surprise maybe, or respect. You'd choose duty over desire? I choose not being the kind of person who sacrifices others for my own benefit, Poppy corrected. That's called being selfish, not noble. There's a difference. The tunnel vanished. Fenric stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. You pass, he said quietly. The ledge dissolved beneath her, but instead of falling back into the water, Poppy found herself standing in the ballroom again. The princesses were still dancing, still trapped in their mechanical movements. Fenric stood beside her, arms crossed, watching his entertainment with the detached interest of a cat watching mice. That was the first trial? Poppy asked, adrenaline still flooding her system. Choosing duty over my own cure? No, the first trial was surviving. You did. The tunnel was extra credit, so to speak. I wanted to see what you'd choose. He smiled, sharp and cold. Most people choose themselves, always. You're more interesting than I gave you credit for. Lucky me, Poppy muttered. What's the second trial? Patience. Fenric snapped his fingers, and the ballroom transformed. The Fey dancers vanished. The princesses remained but changed, no longer trapped in dance, but frozen in individual tableaus of suffering. Each stood on a pedestal, surrounded by mirrors that reflected not their appearance, but their deepest fears, their worst memories, their most private shames. Arya, the youngest, stared at a reflection showing her mother's death. Seraphina watched herself failing her father, disappointing him, being cast aside. One by one, Poppy saw each princess confronted with the thing they feared most. The second trial, Fenric said, walking among the pedestals like a curator in a gallery, is truth. These are mirrors of the soul. They show what people hide, even from themselves. Your task is simple. Look into your own mirror and survive what you see without breaking. A seventh pedestal rose from the floor, empty and waiting. And if I refuse? Then you forfeit. The princesses stay cursed, and you become mine. Fenric's smile widened. But I don't think you'll refuse. You're too curious, too desperate to prove you can endure anything. That's your weakness, little beast. Your need to be stronger than your pain. He wasn't wrong. Poppy hated that he wasn't wrong. She stepped onto the pedestal. The mirrors materialized around her, 6 of them forming a circle. At first, they showed only her reflection, the cursed form, the fur and claws and twisted features she saw every time she looked at water or polished metal. Then the images shifted. The first mirror showed her as a child, 7 years old, watching her new stepmother smile while stirring poison into tea. But in this version, young Poppy drank it. She watched herself die, choking and convulsing while Elara hummed a cheerful tune. The second mirror showed the night of her curse, but different. Her father didn't just hide her away. He drove a knife into her heart himself, choosing Elara over his own daughter, choosing the easy lie over the difficult truth. The third showed Thornwick, but everyone she'd ever known was there, laughing at her. Not afraid, not disgusted, just amused. She was a joke to them, a pathetic creature who thought she mattered, who thought she deserved anything beyond mockery. The fourth mirror showed the princesses. She saved them, broke the curse, proved her innocence, and King Aldrich executed her anyway. Because she was a monster, and monsters didn't get happy endings, and her usefulness didn't erase what she was. The fifth showed her becoming like Elara, cruel, calculating, willing to hurt others to protect herself. She saw herself poisoning someone else, cursing someone else, becoming the thing she hated most. The sixth mirror showed her alone, not for 3 years, but forever. Centuries passing, everyone she knew dying, the world changing and moving on while she remained trapped in her cursed form, immortal and isolated, watching time erase any evidence she'd ever existed. Poppy's breath came in short gasps. The mirrors weren't just showing her fears, they were making her feel them. The despair of each scenario crashed over her like waves, trying to pull her under. You see it now, don't you? Fenric's voice came from beyond the mirrors. The truth. You're not brave. You're not strong. You're a scared, broken thing pretending to be whole. You survived because you didn't have the courage to die. Everything you are is built on fear and spite, and deep down, you know you're worthless. The mirrors pulsed, the images intensifying. Poppy felt herself breaking, felt the tears she'd held back for 3 years finally forcing their way out. You're right, she said, voice cracking. I am scared. I am broken. The mirrors flickered, as if surprised. I'm terrified every single day, Poppy continued, words spilling out like blood from a wound. I'm scared I'll die alone. I'm scared I deserved what happened to me. I'm scared that somewhere deep down I'm as rotten as Elara, that the curse just revealed what was already there. The mirrors began to crack, thin fractures spreading across their surfaces. But you know what? Poppy's voice grew stronger. Being scared doesn't make me weak. Being broken doesn't make me worthless. I'm scared and I do it anyway. I'm broken and I keep fighting. Every day I wake up and choose to survive instead of giving up. That's not weakness. That's the opposite. The cracks widened, light bleeding through. You want to break me by showing me my fears? Fine, I'll look. I'll feel them. I'll let them hurt. Poppy stared directly into the sixth mirror, into the reflection of eternal isolation. But I've been hurting for years and I'm still standing, so go ahead, show me worse. I'll survive that too. The mirrors shattered simultaneously, exploding into fragments that dissolved before hitting the ground. Poppy stood alone on the pedestal, shaking but upright. Fenric slow clapped, the sound mocking. Well done. You faced your truth and didn't shatter. Impressive. He circled the pedestal, evaluating. 2 trials passed. 1 remains. The ballroom shifted again. The pedestals vanished, the princesses disappeared, and Poppy found herself in a garden, not like any garden she'd seen before. This one grew impossible things, trees with silver leaves and golden fruit, flowers that sang in harmony, grass that felt like silk beneath her feet. And in the center, a fountain, clear water bubbling up from a source that glowed with inner light. The same fountain from the tunnel, the cure. The 3rd trial, Fenric said, materializing beside the fountain, is the simplest and the hardest. I offer you a choice, a real one this time. Not a trick, not a test of character, a genuine offer. He dipped his hand into the fountain, the water sparkling as it ran through his fingers. Drink from this fountain, and your curse will break. You'll be human again, more than human. You'll be beautiful beyond measure, healthy, strong. I'll send the princesses home unharmed, completely free of my curse. You'll have saved them, saved yourself, and earned your freedom. And? Poppy asked, because there was always an and. And you'll stay here, with me, as my equal, not my prisoner. I'll teach you magic, show you wonders your mortal world can't imagine. We'll be partners in this realm, ruling together. Fenric's expression was earnest for the first time, almost vulnerable. I'm offering you everything, Poppy. Power, beauty, freedom from the pain that's defined your existence. All you have to do is choose to stay. It should have been an easy refusal. Stay in the Fey realm with a dangerous, manipulative creature who'd been torturing 6 innocent women for months? Obviously not. But Fenric wasn't lying. Poppy could feel it. Fey couldn't lie directly. That was one truth all the stories agreed on. He was genuinely offering her everything she'd lost, everything she'd dreamed about during 3 years in the woods. Why? She asked. Why offer this? Because you interest me, Fenric said simply. In 300 years, you're the first person to surprise me. The first to pass my trials not through power or magic, but through sheer stubborn will. I want to know what else you're capable of. I want to see what you'd become if you weren't constantly fighting just to survive. He held out his hand. Stay. Choose this. Choose a life where you're valued instead of reviled, where your strength is celebrated instead of feared. Choose to stop suffering. Poppy stared at his offered hand, at the fountain, at the garden that was so beautiful it hurt. She thought about Thornwick, about the people who'd thrown rocks at her, who'd called her monster, who'd been relieved when she disappeared, about her father, who'd abandoned her without a second thought, about Alara, who'd tried to kill her 6 times and cursed her when poison failed. She thought about the princesses. They'd go home safely. She'd save them. That part was real. And she thought about what she'd be choosing, not just staying in the Fey realm, but choosing to stop fighting, choosing comfort over the constant struggle that had defined her existence since she was 7 years old. It was tempting. It was so tempting. No, Poppy said. Fenric's hand lowered. No? You're offering me an escape, a beautiful cage instead of the ugly one I've been living in, but still a cage. Poppy met his golden eyes steadily. I didn't survive 3 years in the woods just to trade one kind of isolation for another. I didn't fight my way here to give up now. You're choosing to go back to a world that hates you? I'm choosing to go back to a world where I get to make my own choices, Poppy corrected, where my life is mine, not defined by what you want or what Alara wanted or what anyone else thinks I should be. You're offering me everything except the one thing I actually need, the right to be myself, flaws and all, and build my own life. Fenric stared at her for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not mockery this time, genuine, delighted laughter that echoed through the garden. You magnificent fool, he said, grinning. You're choosing suffering over comfort, struggle over ease, just to maintain control over your own fate. That's either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed, and I honestly can't tell which. Can it be both? Absolutely. He snapped his fingers, and the garden dissolved. They stood in the ballroom again, the princesses still frozen in their dance. You've passed all 3 trials. You chose duty over desire, faced your truth without breaking, and refused power that would have cost you your autonomy. By the terms of our wager, I release the princesses from my curse. The music stopped. The princesses stumbled, awareness flooding back into their eyes. They looked around wildly, confused and terrified, not understanding where they were or what had happened. Poppy? Arya's voice was small, frightened. What? Where? It's okay, Poppy said, moving toward them. You're safe. We're going home. Not quite yet, Fenric interrupted. His expression had shifted, becoming calculating. I said I'd release them from the curse. I said I'd send you all back to the mortal realm unharmed. I never said when. Poppy froze. You can't lie. You made a bargain. I'm not lying. I will send you back, eventually, but time moves differently here. A few years in my realm might be only days in yours. Or it might be decades, centuries even. His smile was sharp as broken glass. You've won the game, little beast, but the game doesn't end just because you won. Rage flooded through Poppy, hot and consuming. She'd been played. Even in victory, she'd been played. You bastard, she breathed. Probably, Fenric agreed. But that's what you get for wagering with Fae. We honor the letter of our bargains, not the spirit. He gestured, and the floor began to ripple. Now, let's see. Where shall I keep you while I decide when to send you home? I have a lovely dungeon that hasn't been used in— Wait, Poppy interrupted. An idea was forming, desperate and probably stupid, but it was all she had. One more wager. Fenric paused. Oh? You said you'd never lost a game, that you're bored with easy victories. Prove it. One more challenge. If I win, you send us back immediately, today, and you let us all go free, including yourself. Including myself? Fenric's eyebrows rose. What does that mean? You're trapped here, Poppy said, the pieces clicking together. Aren't you? All this power, all this magic, but you can't leave this realm. That's why you need entertainment. Why you trap mortals into coming here. You're in a cage as much as anyone. The silence was deafening. The other Fae in the ballroom had gone still, watching their lord with expressions ranging from shock to fear. Choose your next words carefully, Fenric said softly, dangerously. I'm right, Poppy pressed. And I'm offering you a way out. A real challenge, a real game with real stakes. If I win, you come back with us. To the mortal realm, free. And if you lose, then I stay here, forever, not as your equal, as whatever you want me to be. Servant, prisoner, entertainment. My choice in exchange for yours. She held out her hand the way he'd held out his. One more game, all or nothing. Fenric stared at her offered hand. His court held its collective breath. You have no idea what you're offering, he said finally. No idea what I'd do with freedom after 300 years of captivity. Probably nothing good, Poppy admitted. But I'm betting on something else. I'm betting that you're as tired of being trapped as I am. That whatever fresh hell you'd unleash on the mortal world, it's worth it for a chance to choose your own fate. You're insane. We've established that. Poppy kept her hand extended. Do we have a wager? The moment stretched, taut as a bowstring. Then Fenric's hand closed around hers, his skin cold as winter frost. We have a wager, he said. The challenge is this. Behind you is a door. It will open to a room containing 3 objects. One is truth, one is lies, and one is the key to everything. Choose correctly, and we all go free. Choose wrong, and you're mine forever. His smile was vicious. And just to make it interesting, you have to choose without looking, without touching, without using any of your senses except intuition and trust. A door materialized behind Poppy, golden and ornate and radiating menace. That's impossible, she said. Yes, Fenric agreed. But you don't have any other option, so will you trust your instincts or will you fold? Poppy turned to face the door. Behind her, she felt the princess's terror, their exhaustion, their desperate hope. She felt Fenric's predatory anticipation, his certainty that she'd fail. She thought about her life, about every impossible choice she'd faced, every moment she should have died but didn't, about poison and curses and 3 years in the woods, about surviving when survival should have been impossible. "I'll play," she said. The door opened. The room beyond the door was empty. Not dark, not filled with mysterious objects, just empty. White walls, white floor, white ceiling, nothing to choose from because there was nothing there. Poppy stood in the doorway, confusion warring with suspicion. "There's nothing here." "Isn't there?" Fenric's voice came from behind her, amused. "Look closer, or rather, don't look. That was the rule." She closed her eyes, forcing herself to think. The challenge was to choose between 3 objects: truth, lies, and the key to everything, without using her senses. But there were no objects, which meant either Fenric had lied about the challenge, or the objects existed in a way she couldn't perceive normally, or the challenge itself was the trick. "I choose the door," Poppy said. Silence. Then Fenric's laughter, sharp and surprised. "What?" "The door, that's my choice." Poppy turned to face him, certainty building. "You said 3 objects, truth, lies, and the key to everything. But you never said they were in the room. The door is an object. It's solid, real, something I can touch and verify." And how does a door qualify as any of the 3 options? Truth, because it's honestly what it appears to be. No illusion, no trick. Lies, because it promised something behind it that didn't exist. And the key to everything, because it's literally the way through. Poppy smiled, feeling the logic click into place. "You made the challenge impossible by removing the choices. So I'm choosing the only real thing in front of me." Fenric stared at her. His court had gone completely silent, watching their lord with something that looked like shock. "That's..." he started, then stopped. Started again. "That's not how anyone's ever interpreted that challenge before." "Did I get it wrong?" "No." The word came out reluctantly, almost bewildered. "No, you got it exactly right. The door was the answer. Truth, lies, and passage all in one object. I've given this challenge to 11 people over 3 centuries. Every single one walked into the room looking for items that didn't exist and failed when they couldn't find anything." He laughed, the sound containing genuine surprise. "But you didn't even enter. You saw the trick and refused to play it." "So we have a deal?" Poppy pressed. "We all go free? Including you?" Fenric's expression shifted, becoming something Poppy couldn't quite read. "We have a deal. By the terms of our wager, I release the princesses from my curse. I send you all back to the mortal realm immediately, and I..." He paused, as if the words were foreign in his mouth. "I come with you, free of this realm's binding." The ballroom began to dissolve around them, reality unraveling at the edges. The other fae scattered like mist, their forms losing cohesion as Fenric's power withdrew from maintaining the realm. "Wait." One of the princesses, Marina, called out. "What happens to them? Your court?" "They're bound to this realm, not to me," Fenric said dismissively. "They'll survive. They always do. Fae are excellent at adapting to new management." "New management?" Poppy asked. "This realm needs a ruler. Without me, it'll choose someone else. Probably Siobhan. She's been angling for my position for decades." He gestured and the portal appeared before them, swirling silver and shadow. "Shall we? I'd rather not be here when the power transfer happens. It gets messy." The princesses didn't need to be told twice. Arya went first, then Selena, then the others in quick succession. Each stepped through the portal and vanished. Poppy hesitated at the threshold. "If you're lying, if this is another trick..." "I can't lie, remember? You won. Fair and square through cleverness I didn't anticipate." Fenric's smile was sharp. "I honor my bargains, little beast. Always have. Even when they cost me everything." Poppy stepped through. The transition was smoother this time, reality reasserting itself in familiar patterns. Colors corrected themselves. Sounds became sounds again instead of textures. Time resumed its normal flow. Poppy opened her eyes to find herself in the princess's chambers. Dawn light streamed through the windows, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. Lady Morgana stood frozen mid-spell, her hands still raised from whatever magic she'd been attempting. The guards at the door had their weapons half drawn. "By the gods!" Morgana breathed, lowering her hands slowly. "You actually did it. You brought them back." The princesses were already moving, checking themselves, each other, babbling with relief and residual fear. Arya was crying. Serafina was laughing. Selena was holding Marina like she'd never let go. And Fenric stood in the center of the room, looking around with an expression of wonder that made him seem younger, less predatory, almost vulnerable. "Mortal realm," he said softly. "It's been so long I'd forgotten how it feels, how it smells." He held up one hand, watching dust motes dance in the sunlight. "Everything is so temporary here, so fragile. That's what makes it valuable," Poppy said. "Perhaps." Fenric turned to her, and for just a moment, something like respect flickered in those golden eyes. "You surprised me. 4 times now. That's a record." "Only 4, I'm disappointed in myself." "Don't be. Most people never surprise me once." He moved toward the window, drinking in the view of the city below. "So, what happens now? You've saved the princesses, proven your innocence, and freed an ancient Fey lord from his prison. Where do you go from here?" Good question. Poppy hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so focused on survival, on winning, on not dying that she hadn't considered what came after. "The king," Morgana said, practical as always. "He needs to know the curse is broken, and we need to determine who framed you in the first place." Right, because saving the princesses didn't change the fact that someone had accused her of cursing them. Someone had built an elaborate frame that led guards to her cottage, that brought her here in chains. Someone still wanted her destroyed. "My stepmother," Poppy said. "It has to be her, but I still don't understand why. What does she gain from the princesses dying, from me taking the blame?" "Boy, let's ask your king," Fenric suggested. "I'm curious about this Alpha King who rules through fear. It's been centuries since I met a proper tyrant." "He's not a tyrant," Arya protested weakly. "He's just protective. Semantics." Fenric headed for the door, moving with the casual confidence of someone who'd never encountered a locked door that could keep him out. "Shall we? I want to see his face when he realizes his sister's savior is a cursed monster and an ancient fae." Poppy exchanged glances with Morgana, who looked torn between professional interest and deep concern. "This should be interesting," the older woman muttered. Aldrich's council chamber was in session when they arrived, the guards too shocked by the sight of the healthy princesses to do more than stare. The king himself stood at a massive table covered in maps and documents, Lord Castellan at his side, several other nobles and military leaders arranged around the room. He looked up as the doors opened, and the expression that crossed his face was pure shock. "Serafina?" His voice cracked slightly, the iron control slipping. "You're... all of you... We're fine," Serafina said, stepping forward. "The curse is broken. Poppy broke it." Every eye in the room turned to Poppy. She fought the urge to step back, to hide, to make herself smaller. She'd faced down Fey lords and impossible trials. She could handle a room full of nobles. Probably. "Explain," Aldrich commanded, his gaze moving from Poppy to Fenric with obvious suspicion. "Now. All of it." So they did. Poppy explained the portal, the Fey realm, Fenric's trials. The princesses filled in details about the dancing, the exhaustion, the 4 months of slow death. Morgana provided magical context, explaining the sophistication of the curse. Through it all, Aldrich listened with an expression like carved stone. When they finished, the silence was heavy enough to suffocate. "And him?" Aldrich gestured to Fenric. "What is he?" "I'm the Fey Lord who cursed your sisters," Fenric said cheerfully. "Also the one who's now freed them, so really, it balances out." "Balances?" Aldrich looked like he might have a stroke. "You cursed my sisters for 4 months, nearly killed them, and you think it balances out?" In my defense, it was excellent entertainment, and technically, Poppy freed them, not me. I just honored our bargain. Why? Aldrich's question was directed at Poppy. Why curse them in the first place? Fenric shrugged. Boredom, mostly. Your kingdom is built on a convergence point between realms. Makes it easy to reach through, pull people to my domain. The princess's combined magical potential made them particularly attractive targets. Magical potential? Selena asked. We don't have magic. You do, actually. You've just never accessed it. Royal bloodlines often carry latent power. Fenric examined his nails with apparent disinterest. I was going to drain it slowly over months, then release them before they died. I'm not a monster, despite what you might think. You'd trap them in a curse that was killing them, Aldrich said, voice dangerously quiet. Well, yes, but I wasn't going to let it finish. There's a difference. Fenric met the king's gaze without flinching. I'm bound by bargains, Your Majesty. I can't break them, can't refuse them once accepted. Poppy made a wager. She won. So here we are. Here we are, Aldrich repeated. He turned to Poppy. You saved my sister's lives. You've proven your innocence. For that you have my gratitude and your freedom. His expression hardened. But we still don't know who accused you, who built this frame. I do, Lord Castellan said quietly. Everyone turned to stare at him. The nobleman's face was pale, his hands shaking slightly. I received the accusation, he continued. Anonymous letters, delivered over several weeks, describing a cursed creature near the palace, providing details about its appearance, suggesting it might be connected to the princess's condition. He pulled a stack of parchments from his robes, spreading them on the table. I thought I was protecting the kingdom. I thought, let me see those, Morgana demanded, snatching up the letters. She scanned them quickly, her expression darkening. These were written by someone with knowledge of court protocols, formal language, access to expensive parchment. And look, she held one up to the light. There's a watermark, Thornwick Merchant Guild. Poppy's blood went cold. My father's guild. Your stepmother would have access to his supplies, Ras, Morgana said. The parchment, the official seals, everything needed to make these look legitimate. But why? Arya asked. Why go through all this trouble? Because she wanted to make sure I stayed gone, Poppy said, the pieces finally clicking together. Permanently. It wasn't enough to curse me, to drive me into the woods. She needed me dead. But she couldn't just kill me outright. Too many questions, too much risk. So she waited. Waited for the perfect opportunity to frame me for something that would guarantee my execution. And the princess's curse gave her that opportunity, Morgana finished. She didn't create it. That was Fenric. But when she learned about it, she saw a way to use it against you. How did she even know about the curse? Seraphina demanded. Court gossip travels, Lord Castellan said quietly. The princess's condition wasn't exactly secret. Half the kingdom knew something was wrong in the palace. Aldrich's hands clenched into fists. So this woman, this merchant's wife from a backwater village, orchestrated an elaborate frame to ensure a girl she already cursed would be executed for crimes she didn't commit. Is that what you're telling me? Yes, Poppy said. That's exactly what I'm telling you. Then we arrest her, bring her here for trial, charge her with false accusation, conspiracy, whatever else we can make stick. Aldrich's tone left no room for argument. No one manipulates my justice system and walks away. With respect, Your Majesty, Fenric interrupted, that won't work. Excuse me? She'll deny everything. The letters are anonymous, untraceable to her directly. You have no proof she wrote them, no witnesses to her actions. It's her word against assumptions. Fenric smiled. You need a confession, or evidence so damning she can't deny it. And how do you suggest we get that? Aldrich asked icily. Simple. Fenric looked at Poppy. We send her a message she can't ignore. We make her think she's won, then trap her when she reveals herself. A trap, Poppy said slowly. You want to use me as bait. I want to give her enough rope to hang herself. There's a difference. Fenric's expression turned calculating. Your stepmother cursed you. That magic is still active, still binding you to that form. If we can trick her into revealing how she did it, the spell, the components, the method, we'll have proof of her guilt, and potentially a way to break your curse. Hope flared in Poppy's chest, dangerous and bright. How? We announce that you've been executed for crimes against the crown, Fenric said. Make it public, make it convincing. Your stepmother will think she's safe. Then we pay her a visit and see what secrets she's willing to share when she thinks there are no consequences. That's manipulative and underhanded, Arya said. Yes, Fenric agreed. It's also the only plan that might work. Unless you have a better idea? Silence. Nobody did. Aldrich studied Poppy for a long moment. It's your choice. Your stepmother, your curse, your risk. I won't order you to do this. Poppy thought about Alara, about 8 years of poison and cruelty, about the curse that stole her life, about 3 years of isolation and the frame that nearly ended in execution. About all of it, every terrible moment, and how Alara had orchestrated it with smiles and fake concern. I'll do it, she said. Set the trap. Let's see if she's stupid enough to spring it. The announcement went out the next day. Poppy, the cursed creature who'd attempted to harm the royal family, had been executed for her crimes. The princesses were recovering. Justice had been served. The execution was fake, of course. A glamour spell Fenric cast over a dead pig to make it look like Poppy's body while she watched from a hidden alcove. The performance was convincing enough that several nobles in attendance looked genuinely shaken. News traveled fast. Within 2 days, messengers confirmed that word had reached Thornwick. Within 3, they were ready to move. Aldrich wanted to send soldiers, make it official. Poppy refused. This needed to be personal, direct. Just her, Fenric for magical support, and Morgana to verify whatever evidence they found. They traveled to Thornwick at night, arriving in the early hours when most of the village slept. Poppy's childhood home looked the same. Well-maintained, prosperous, showing no signs of the rot that lived inside. Poppy stood in the shadows across the street, staring at the house where she'd grown up, where her father still lived, probably sleeping peacefully, unaware that his wife was a murderer and his daughter was about to confront her. Second thoughts? Fenric asked quietly. 1,000 of them? Poppy's claws dug into her palms. But I'm doing this anyway. Good. I'd be disappointed if you backed down now. He gestured, and the front door unlocked with a soft click. After you, little beast. This is your show. They entered silently. The house was dark, quiet except for soft snoring from upstairs. Poppy's father, dead to the world. Alara's chambers were separate in the east wing. Of course they were. Even in marriage, she maintained distance. Poppy found her stepmother asleep, looking peaceful and innocent in the moonlight. It would be easy to kill her like this. Quick, simple, justified revenge for everything she'd done. But Poppy wasn't like Alara. She didn't solve problems with murder. Wake up, she said. Alara's eyes snapped open. She saw Poppy standing over her bed and screamed. Quiet! Fenric commanded, and the sound cut off as magic sealed Alara's voice. We're here to talk, not to alert the neighborhood. Alara's face went through several emotions in rapid succession. Terror, confusion, then calculation as she recognized Poppy despite the curse. You're supposed to be dead, she whispered when Fenric released her voice. They executed you. Disappointed? Poppy asked. Yes, Alara said bluntly. Then, realizing her mistake, no, of course not. I just heard. The news said. The news lied. I'm alive, free, and here to ask you some questions. Poppy pulled up a chair, sitting casually despite her hammering heart. Let's start with the curse, the one that did this to me. She gestured at her transformed body. How did you do it? I don't know what you're talking about. Wrong answer. Fenric stepped forward, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I'm Faye, woman. I can taste lies like wine. Try again. Alara's face went pale. She looked between Poppy and Fenric, clearly calculating her options. You can't prove anything, she finally said. Even if I did curse you, and I'm not saying I did, there's no evidence. No witnesses. Nothing. True, Poppy agreed. But see, I don't need to prove it in court. I just need to know how you did it so I can break it. So here's your choice. Tell me willingly, or he extracts it from you magically. Either way, I'm getting answers tonight. Fae can't directly harm mortals who haven't bargained with them, Alara said, but her voice wavered. Also true, Fenric said cheerfully, but I can make you very uncomfortable without technically harming you. Would you like a demonstration? The air around Alara began to shimmer with heat, not quite burning, but getting close. She gasped, pressing back against the headboard. Stop! I'll tell you, just stop! The heat vanished. Fenric smiled. Wonderful. Please continue. Alara glared at Poppy with pure hatred. You deserved it. You were always in the way, always reminding your father of his first wife. Celeste needed to be the favorite, the important one. But you kept existing, kept being there. She laughed bitterly. The curse was supposed to kill you, transform you completely into a beast, then death. But you stopped halfway, trapped in that form. Even in cursing you, you had to be difficult. How did you do it? Poppy repeated, voice steady despite the rage building inside her. A witch in the North Woods. She owed me a favor, provided the components. Wolf's blood, nightshade, and a piece of your clothing mixed under a new moon. Alara's expression turned smug. I put it in your tea that night. You felt the transformation start and thought it was natural, thought you'd done something to deserve it. But it was me. All me. And the letters to the palace? Morgana asked from the doorway, where she'd been recording everything with a spell. Accusing Poppy of cursing the princesses? Insurance, Alara said. When I heard about the royal curse, I saw an opportunity. Make sure the monster stayed gone permanently. She looked at Poppy. You should have died in those woods. You should have been too weak to survive. But you kept living, kept existing where you weren't wanted. So I made sure you'd finally be erased. The room was silent except for Alara's breathing and the faint scratching of Morgana's magical recording. Got it all? Poppy asked without taking her eyes off her stepmother. Every word, Morgana confirmed. Confession to cursing a minor, attempted murder, false accusation to crown authorities. That's a life sentence minimum, possibly execution depending on the king's mood. Alara's smugness evaporated. You can't, that's not, I was coerced. He threatened me. She pointed at Fenric. I offered you discomfort or honesty, Fenric corrected. You chose honesty. That's not coercion, that's consequence. He looked at Poppy. What do you want to do with her? What did she want? Poppy looked at the woman who'd tried to kill her 8 times, who'd cursed her, who'd spent 11 years trying to erase her existence. The woman who'd smiled and played the devoted stepmother while poisoning a child's tea. She should want revenge, should want to see Alara suffer the way she'd suffered. But looking at her stepmother now, pale and frightened, all her power stripped away, Poppy mostly felt tired. I want justice, she said finally. Not revenge, justice. Let the king decide her fate. Let the system she tried to manipulate against me work the way it's supposed to. Noble, Fenric observed. Boring, but noble. I'm not doing it to be noble. I'm doing it because if I sink to her level, she wins. She gets to say we're the same, that the curse revealed what I really am. Poppy stood. I'm better than that. Better than her. Guards arrived at dawn to collect Alara, summoned by Morgana's message spell. Poppy's father woke to find his wife in chains and his cursed daughter standing in the hallway. His face went through several emotions before settling on confused guilt. Poppy? He said uncertainly. You're alive. No thanks to you, she said quietly. You let her curse me. You hid me away instead of protecting me. You chose her over your own daughter. I didn't know. She said you were cursed, that there was nothing. You didn't ask questions, didn't investigate, didn't care enough to make sure I was safe. Poppy felt tears threatening, but refused to let them fall. Not here. Not for him. She tried to kill me 8 times before the curse, and you never noticed. Or you noticed and didn't care. Either way, you failed me. He opened his mouth, closed it. No defense came. I don't know if I can forgive you, Poppy continued. Maybe someday, but not today. Today I just need you to know that I survived despite you, not because of you, and that I'm going to keep surviving, Keep fighting. Keep proving that I deserved better than what you gave me." She turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the hallway looking broken. It should have felt like victory. It didn't. It felt like closing a wound that had been bleeding for 11 years, necessary, painful, and nowhere near healed. They returned to Silvercrest with Elara in custody. The trial was swift and brutal. The confession Morgana had recorded, leaving no room for defense. Elara was sentenced to life imprisonment in the royal dungeon, stripped of all titles and property. Celeste, golden, perfect Celeste, appeared at the trial looking lost and frightened. She testified that she'd never known about her mother's actions, had believed Poppy was cursed naturally. Poppy didn't know if that was true or convenient, and frankly didn't care anymore. The princesses recovered quickly once the curse was broken, their strength returning with each day. They were grateful, effusive in their thanks, and Poppy found herself unexpectedly adopted into their circle. Arya in particular refused to leave her alone, chattering about everything and nothing while Poppy tried to figure out what came next, because the curse was still there. Elara had confessed to the method, but knowing how it was cast didn't automatically break it. The witch who'd provided the components was dead. Morgana confirmed that through her contacts. The spell was old, complex, designed to be permanent. Poppy was still a monster, still trapped halfway between human and wolf. "Don't look so defeated," Fenric said, finding her on the palace balcony 3 days after Elara's sentencing. "You've won everything else. We'll figure this out too." "Will we, or am I stuck like this forever?" "Possibly," he admitted, "but I have an idea. It's risky, potentially stupid, and will definitely hurt. Interested?" Poppy laughed despite herself. "Why not? What's one more impossible thing?" "That's the spirit." Fenric leaned against the balcony railing, looking out at the city. "Your curse is bound by the components, wolf's blood, nightshade, and a piece of your clothing. Classic transformation magic, very old school. To break it, we need to sever those connections." "How?" "By remaking the bargain. Your stepmother made you into a monster through trickery and poison. What if you chose this form willingly, accepted it as part of who you are rather than something imposed?" Poppy stared at him. "That doesn't make sense. How does choosing to be cursed break the curse?" "Because curses run on power dynamics. Someone forcing their will onto you, bending your nature against your choice. But if you claim that nature, make it yours." He shrugged. "The curse loses its foundation. No longer forced, no longer binding." "That's insane." "Yes. Also our best option." Fenric pulled out a small vial filled with silver liquid. "This is from my realm. Magic distilled into physical form. Drink it while declaring that you accept your cursed form. Claim it as your true self and the transformation will complete. You'll become fully wolf, fully beast. And then I'm stuck like that forever," Poppy said flatly. "No, then you choose to be human again. Because it's a choice, not a curse. You control the transformation, not the magic." His golden eyes were serious. "It's a gamble. It might not work. You might end up trapped as a full wolf with no way back. But it's the only path I can see to breaking Elara's curse completely." Poppy took the vial, holding it up to the light. The liquid inside swirled like mercury, alive and dangerous. "You saved the princesses," Fenric said quietly. "Proven your innocence. Brought your stepmother to justice. You've won everything except your own freedom. This is the last trial, little beast. The one that matters most." "Why do you care?" Poppy asked. "You got your freedom. You're no longer bound to the Fey realm. Why help me?" Fenric was quiet for a moment. "Because you're the first person in 300 years who saw me as something other than a monster or a tool. You wagered on my desire for freedom, bet that I was more than my cruelty. You were right." He smiled, sharp and genuine. "Consider this returning the favor. You believed I could be better. Let me believe you can be free." Poppy looked at the vial, at the palace beyond, at the life she might claim if she took this last risk. Then she uncorked the vial and drank. The liquid burned like swallowing lightning. Power flooded through her, ancient and wild, rewriting her body from the inside out. She felt the transformation accelerate, the halfway state dissolving. "I accept this," she gasped out. "I claim this form as mine. Not cursed, not forced, mine by choice. The world exploded into sensation. Her body stretched, reformed, completed the change that had stopped halfway 3 years ago. Fur covered her completely, her shape becoming fully lupine, powerful and predatory and free. Poppy stood on 4 legs, seeing the world through wolf eyes, and for the first time since the curse began, she didn't feel trapped. She felt powerful. She'd chosen this. It was hers. And because it was hers, she could let it go. She thought of her human form, pictured herself as she'd been before, not beautiful like Celeste, not perfect or graceful, but herself, awkward and gangly and stubbornly alive. The transformation reversed, slowly this time, controlled. Poppy felt her body shift back, but different. Not cursed, not forced halfway. Completely human, whole and unmarked, the curse finally, truly broken. She stood on the balcony in her human form for the first time in 3 years, staring at her hands. No claws, no fur, just skin and scars, and proof that she'd survived everything. It worked, she breathed. Of course it worked, Fenric said smugly. I'm very good at breaking curses. It's a whole thing. Poppy started laughing, the sound building until tears ran down her very human face. She'd done it. Survived poison, survived curses, survived 3 years in the wilderness, and trials by Fae, and execution orders, and her stepmother's hatred. She'd won. The palace bells rang at dawn, announcing something significant. Poppy woke in the guest chamber she'd been assigned, actual chambers now, not a guarded room, and stared at her human hands in the morning light. Still human, still real. The curse hadn't crept back during the night. 3 days had passed since she'd broken it, and she still half expected to wake up trapped in fur again. A knock at the door. Arya entered without waiting for permission, carrying a dress draped over her arms. Father wants to see you. Official audience, full court. He sent this. She held up the dress, deep forest green, simple but well made, appropriate for formal occasions without being ostentatious. What's the occasion? Poppy asked, taking the dress warily. He didn't say, but he's been in meetings with advisors all night, and messengers have been riding in and out of the palace constantly. Arya flopped onto the bed with the casual familiarity they'd developed over the past week. There's a rumor that dignitaries are arriving from neighboring kingdoms. Something big is happening. Poppy dressed quickly, the fabric feeling strange against skin that had been covered in fur for so long. Human clothes, human body, human life. She should be thrilled. Mostly she just felt off balance, like the ground kept shifting beneath her feet. The throne room was packed when she arrived, nobles and officials crowding the space in their formal finery. Poppy felt underdressed despite the nice dress, felt exposed without fur to hide behind. She spotted Fenric near the back, leaning against a pillar with calculated disinterest, but his eyes tracked her movement across the room. Aldrich sat on his throne, the 6 princesses arranged behind him in order of age. All of them healthy, all of them watching Poppy with expressions ranging from encouragement to curiosity. Poppy Thornwick, Aldrich's voice cut through the murmur of conversation. Approach. She walked forward, aware of every eye on her, every whisper that followed. 3 weeks ago, she'd been a cursed creature dragged here in chains. Now she was... what? She didn't know anymore. You saved my sisters' lives, Aldrich said when she reached the base of the throne. You broke a curse that the kingdom's most powerful mages couldn't touch. You uncovered a conspiracy against the crown, brought a criminal to justice, and proved your innocence beyond any doubt. I did what I had to do to survive, Poppy said honestly. The rest just happened. Nevertheless, you've earned the gratitude of the crown and the kingdom. Aldrich stood, descending the steps to stand before her. Up close, she could see the exhaustion in his face, the weight he carried. I'm told you have no home to return to. Your father's house holds nothing but bad memories, and your cottage in the woods is... He paused. Not suitable for permanent residence. I've survived worse, Poppy said, but her heart sank. She'd been trying not to think about what came next, where she'd go. The woods weren't an option anymore. She'd need supplies to rebuild, and she had no money, no resources. You could stay here, Arya blurted out. The youngest princess clapped a hand over her mouth, looking mortified, but the damage was done. Seraphina surprisingly nodded. We owe you our lives. The least we can do is offer you a place at court. I'm not court material, Poppy protested. I don't know the first thing about being a noble, or who said anything about being a noble. Aldrich's expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. You survived in the wilderness for 3 years. You tracked and infiltrated a Fey realm. You solved problems through unconventional thinking when traditional approaches failed. He looked at his counsel. Sounds like someone we could use in royal service. The room erupted in whispers. Poppy stared at the king, trying to process what he was suggesting. You want me to work for you? I want to offer you a position as a special investigator for the crown. Someone who can handle situations that require creative solutions, non-traditional problems. Aldrich's lips twitched towards something that might have been a smile. You've proven you can think outside conventional boundaries. That's valuable. I don't... Poppy started, then stopped. What was she going to say? That she didn't deserve it? That she was just a merchant's daughter who'd survived through stubbornness and luck? I need to think about it. Fair enough. But there's something else. Aldrich gestured, and servants brought forward a small chest. Your stepmother's property was seized by the crown as part of her sentence. This includes assets she acquired through your father's business, assets that were legally yours as his legitimate heir. He opened the chest. It was filled with documents, deeds, and a substantial amount of gold. Your inheritance, Aldrich said, held in trust until you were found. Consider it compensation for what was stolen from you. Poppy looked at the gold, at the papers that represented property and investments, and a future she'd never expected to have. My father, does he know? Your father is no longer in a position to object. We found evidence he was aware of at least some of your stepmother's actions. While not directly complicit in the curse, his negligence makes him legally liable. Aldrich's expression was implacable. He's been stripped of his merchant license and most of his assets. What remains goes to you. It should have felt like justice. Instead, it felt hollow. Poppy had wanted her father to care, to fight for her, to be the parent she'd needed. She'd never wanted him destroyed. But he'd made his choices, just like everyone else. I accept the inheritance, she said quietly. But I want to establish a fund with part of it. For children like me, the ones who are cursed or abandoned or trapped in situations they can't escape. Give them resources, protection, a way out. Aldrich studied her for a long moment. That's unusually generous for someone who just got their life back. It's practical. I survived because I was stubborn and lucky. Not everyone has that combination. Poppy met his gaze steadily. If I can make it easier for the next cursed kid, I'm going to. Approved. We'll have the royal treasurer work out the details. Aldrich returned to his throne, settling into it with the air of someone completing a performance. Now, the other matter. He gestured, and guards opened the side doors. A procession entered, officials in formal robes carrying staffs and banners that Poppy didn't recognize. Representatives from the Fey Accords Council, Morgana murmured from somewhere behind Poppy. This should be interesting. The lead official, an elderly man with a face like weathered stone, bowed to Aldrich before turning to scan the crowd. His eyes found Fenric and narrowed. Lord Fenric of the Silver Court, he said, voice carrying across the room. You stand in violation of your binding. You were sentenced to remain in the Between Realm for crimes against the mortal world. Your presence here constitutes a breach of the Accords. Fenric pushed off from his pillar, sauntering forward, with zero concern for the danger he was in. I was released. Legally, through a bargain fairly won. Check your precious accords. Bargains supersede bindings. Only if the bargain was made with proper authority. A cursed vagrant gambling for her life doesn't constitute proper authority. Hey, Poppy protested. I wasn't a vagrant. I had a cottage. The point stands. The bargain is invalid, which means you're in violation, which means we have authority to rebind you immediately. The official raised his staff, magic crackling along its length. Wait, Aldrich interrupted. By what law do you claim authority in my kingdom? The Fey Accords supersede mortal law in matters concerning Fey criminals. Lord Fenric is currently under my protection as a guest of the crown. You'll need to provide evidence of his crimes before I allow you to take him anywhere. The official's expression soured. His crimes are well documented. 300 years ago, he created a plague of nightmares that devastated 7 kingdoms. Thousands died. He was bound to the Between Realm as punishment. 300 years ago, Fenric said lazily, bit of a grudge to hold, don't you think? Justice doesn't expire. No, but apparently it gets selective. Tell them about the provocation, Matthias. Tell them why I created those nightmares. The official, Matthias, went rigid. That's irrelevant. Is it? Because from what I recall, those 7 kingdoms had just finished burning 5 Fae settlements, killing everyone inside, including children. My nightmares were retaliation for genocide. Fenric's casual demeanor had vanished, replaced by something cold and dangerous. You want to arrest me for war crimes? Fine. But let's arrest everyone, not just the Fae. The room had gone silent. Poppy looked between Fenric and Matthias, pieces clicking together. The Fae Accords Council wasn't about justice. It was about control, about making sure Fae stayed trapped, contained, punished for defending themselves. The Accords were established to prevent further bloodshed, Matthias said stiffly. Your binding was necessary for peace. My binding was political theater. You needed a scapegoat, and I was convenient. Fenric turned to Aldrich. I'm formally requesting asylum in Silvercrest. As someone who's provided valuable service to the crown, helping save the princesses, assisting in breaking a curse, contributing to criminal investigations, I believe I've earned consideration. Aldrich looked like he'd swallowed something sour. Granting asylum to a Fae Lord with a history of creating nightmare plagues wasn't exactly politically safe, but refusing would mean handing Fenric over to a council that clearly had its own agenda. The Crown recognizes Lord Fenric's contributions, Aldrich said carefully. However, asylum requires vetting and approval through proper channels. I'm placing him under house arrest in the palace while we investigate the historical claims and determine the appropriate response. Unacceptable? Matthias protested. He needs to be bound immediately before— Before what? Poppy interrupted. She was tired of people talking around her, making decisions that affected her life without input. Before he defends himself? Before we hear both sides of a 300-year-old conflict? You want to punish him for retaliation against genocide, but you're not even willing to acknowledge that the genocide happened? This doesn't concern you, girl. Actually, it does. He helped save my life. He helped break my curse. He kept his bargains, even when it cost him his freedom. Poppy stepped forward, positioning herself between Matthias and Fenric. So, if you want to take him, you'll have to go through me. You can't stop us. You have no authority, no power. She has my authority, Aldrich said quietly. And in my kingdom, that's more than sufficient. Lord Fenric remains under crown protection until proper investigation is completed. If you have complaints, file them through diplomatic channels. Matthias looked like he might argue further, but the guards had moved into position around the throne, hands on weapons. The message was clear. This conversation was over. The council will remember this, Matthias said coldly. Harboring a criminal makes you complicit in his crimes. Then I suppose we'll have to investigate those crimes thoroughly. Wouldn't want to be complicit in something that turns out to be justified self-defense. Aldrich's tone could have frozen water. You're dismissed. The council representatives left in a storm of offended dignity and thinly veiled threats. When the doors closed behind them, the tension in the room shifted from diplomatic to exhausted. Well, Fenric said brightly, that was fun. We should do it again sometime. You, Aldrich pointed at him, are more trouble than you're worth. Probably. But I'm interesting trouble, which is better than boring compliance. House arrest, palace grounds. One step outside and I'll let them take you myself. Fenric bowed with exaggerated courtesy. Your Majesty is too kind. As the court began to disperse, Arya grabbed Poppy's arm. That was amazing. The way you stood up to them, you'll have to go through me. I thought Matthias was going to have a stroke. I wasn't trying to be amazing. I was trying to stop them from dragging off someone who helped me. Poppy extracted her arm gently. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I was standing, it looked like you were standing up for what's right regardless of who it pissed off. Arya's smile was knowing. Sounds like something a hero would do. I'm not a hero. Tell that to literally everyone who watched you save 6 princesses from a death curse. Arya squeezed her hand. Get used to it, Poppy. You don't get to go back to being invisible anymore. Over the next week, Poppy discovered that Arya was absolutely right. She couldn't walk through the palace without people recognizing her, thanking her, asking for favors or advice, or just wanting to be associated with the girl who'd beaten a Fey lord at his own game. It was exhausting. She found refuge in the palace library, a massive room filled with books and scrolls and blessed silence. Fenric found her there 3 days after the council's visit, sprawled in a chair near the window with a book on magical theory. Hiding? He asked, settling into the chair opposite. Reading, Poppy corrected. There's a difference. Liar. You're hiding from admirers and supplicants and everyone who wants a piece of the hero. He plucked the book from her hands, scanning the title. Advanced Curse Theory, Light Reading. I want to understand what happened to me, how the curse worked, why it trapped me halfway, how breaking it was possible. She took the book back. Knowledge is armor. Can't be tricked by what you understand. Wise. Also depressing. You've been free for a week, and you're already preparing for the next battle. Aren't you? The council isn't going to give up. They'll find a way to force Aldrich's hand, and when they do, I'll handle it. I've been outsmarting bureaucrats for 3 centuries. I'm not worried about Matthias and his political posturing. Fenric stretched out, completely relaxed despite the danger hanging over him. Besides, I have insurance now. What kind of insurance? You. The girl who saved the princesses, broke an ancient curse, and publicly defended a Fey criminal against proper authority. Your beloved Poppy, the people's hero. If the council comes for me, you'll object. And if you object, people listen. Poppy stared at him. You're using me as a political shield. I'm recognizing that your defense of me carried weight. There's a difference. He smiled at her expression. Don't look so offended. You used my power to break your curse. I'm using your reputation to maintain my freedom. It's symbiotic. It's manipulative. Yes, also practical. You're learning. He stood, moving to browse the bookshelves. The council is investigating the historical records of the conflict that led to my binding. When they realize I wasn't lying about the genocide, they'll have a problem. Either acknowledge that their justice was selective and political, or double down and look like tyrants. What will they choose? Double down. Organizations like that always do. Admitting fault would undermine their authority. He pulled a book from the shelf, examining it. But by then, I'll have established enough value here that removing me becomes politically complicated. Aldrich's already using me as a consultant on magical threats. The princesses like me. You've defended me publicly. The longer I'm here, the harder it becomes to justify dragging me away. So your plan is to just wait them out? My plan is to become indispensable. Make myself so useful that the cost of removing me exceeds the benefit. He looked at her over the book. Same thing you're doing, actually, except you're doing it accidentally, and I'm being deliberate about it. The Poppy considered that. I'm not trying to be indispensable. I'm just trying to figure out what comes next. And what does come next? Are you taking Aldrich's offer? Special investigator for the crown? I don't know. It feels like trading one cage for another. I'd be useful, valued even, but still defined by what I can do for powerful people rather than what I want for myself. So what do you want? The question stopped her. What did she want? For 3 years, she'd wanted to survive. Then she'd wanted to break the curse. Then she'd wanted justice for what Alara had done. But now, with all of that accomplished, what was left? I want to choose, she said slowly. Not react, not survive, not prove anything. Just choose what my life looks like without someone else's expectations or cruelty or bargains defining it. Ambitious, Fenric observed. Also terrifying. Freedom means responsibility for your own failures. I've been responsible for my own survival since I was 7. I think I can handle it. He smiled, genuine and almost warm. I think you can too, which is why I'm going to offer you something dangerous and probably stupid. Your specialty. Exactly. Stay at court if you want. Take Aldrich's position, become the respectable hero everyone expects, or, he paused for dramatic effect, come with me. I'm establishing a practice as an independent magical consultant, someone who handles problems too weird, too dangerous, or too politically sensitive for traditional authorities. I need a partner who understands mortal concerns and can navigate situations I'd normally solve with violence or trickery. Poppy blinked. You want me to go into business with you? I want to offer you an alternative to being either a vagrant in the woods or a crown employee. We'd be equals. Partners. You handle the mortal side, I handle the magical side, and together we solve impossible problems for people who can pay. People like who? Cursed children who need resources. Families dealing with fey bargains. Villages plagued by magical threats their local authorities can't handle. Anyone caught between mortal law and magical reality who needs someone who understands both. He set the book down. You wanted to help people like you. This is how. Not through a fund that bureaucrats will eventually corrupt, but through direct action. It was tempting. More tempting than it should be. Partnership with a fey lord who'd cursed 6 princesses and created nightmare plagues? Insane. Dangerous. Probably a terrible idea. Also exactly the kind of unconventional solution that had kept her alive this long. I need to think about it, she said. Fair. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. House arrest, remember? He headed for the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think you'd be wasted in a traditional position. You're too strange, too sharp, too used to working outside normal boundaries. The crown would try to smooth your edges, make you fit their expectations. You'd hate it within a year. And working with you would be different? Working with me, you'd hate it within a week, but at least it would be interesting. He left, and Poppy was alone with her thoughts and a decision that felt impossibly large. 2 days later, she stood in Aldrich's private office, not the throne room with its audience and performance, but a smaller space where the king could be just a man trying to hold his kingdom together. You're refusing the position, he said before she could speak. Not a question. I'm grateful for the offer, but yes, because Fenric offered you something else. Because I need to figure out who I am without someone else's authority defining it. Crown investigator, vagrant in the woods, cursed monster. Those are all titles someone else gave me. Poppy met his gaze steadily. I want to choose my own title for once. Aldrich was quiet, studying her. You know he's dangerous, that he's using you as much as you'd be using him. I know. I also know he kept his bargains when he didn't have to, that he helped break my curse when he could have walked away. That underneath the cruelty and games, there's something that understands what it's like to be trapped by other people's decisions. You're defending him again. I'm understanding him. There's a difference. She straightened. I'm taking part of my inheritance to establish that fund we discussed, for cursed and abandoned children. The rest I'm using to set up a practice with Fenric, independent magical consultation and problem solving. We'll handle cases that fall through the cracks between mortal law and magical reality. And if the Fey Accords Council objects to you working with him, then they'll have to deal with me too. I'm good at being inconvenient when necessary. Aldrich almost smiled. You are at that. Very well, I won't stop you, but I reserve the right to hire you for particularly difficult problems. Contract basis only, no authority, no obligation to follow orders I disagree with. Agreed. You drive a hard bargain for someone who just got their life back. I learned from the best, Poppy said, thinking of Fenric and his impossible games. She left the office feeling lighter than she had in years. No crown authority, no obligation to prove herself, no cage with prettier bars. Just a choice freely made and a future that was actually hers. The princesses threw her a going-away celebration. She wasn't leaving the capital entirely, but she was moving out of the palace into rooms above the office space she'd rented. Arya cried. Selena made her promise to visit weekly, and even Serafina grudgingly admitted she'd miss having someone around who wasn't afraid to argue with her. You saved our lives, Serafina said quietly during a rare moment alone. I was horrible to you at first, suspicious and cruel and scared and dying, Poppy interrupted. You had reason to be suspicious. I would have been too. Still, I'm sorry, and I'm grateful. And if you ever need anything, crown influence, military support, someone to threaten people on your behalf, let me know. I'll remember that. The office space was small but serviceable, with rooms above for living quarters. Fenric had already moved in, filling it with magical instruments and books and things that glowed ominously in the dark. A sign hung above the door, freshly painted. Thornwick and Fenric, solutions for unusual problems. Thornwick first? Fenric observed. Presumptuous. Alphabetical, Poppy corrected. Also, you're still under house arrest, technically. Putting your name first might draw unwanted attention. Fair point. He gestured around the space. What do you think? I think we're insane and this will probably end in disaster. Probably. But it'll be interesting disaster. He held out his hand. Partners? Poppy looked at his offered hand, remembering all the bargains and wagers and impossible choices that had brought her here. Remembering poison and curses and 3 years in the woods. Remembering trials and victories, and learning that she was stronger than anyone, including herself, had believed. She took his hand. Partners. The first client arrived 3 days later. A farmer whose daughter had been cursed by a fae she'd accidentally offended, turning the girl's words into flowers whenever she spoke. The local authorities couldn't help. Fae curses were outside their jurisdiction. The fae wouldn't reverse it. Bargains were binding. The family was desperate. Poppy and Fenric took the case. It took 2 weeks, 3 trips to the Fae realm, and 1 very creative reinterpretation of bargain terms, but they broke the curse. The girl spoke normally again. The family paid what they could afford and spread word of the strange partnership that could solve impossible problems. More clients followed. A merchant cursed to grow younger every day. A village plagued by nightmares that turned real. A noblewoman whose son was stolen by Fae and replaced with a changeling. Cases that fell through the cracks, that were too weird or too magical or too dangerous for normal authorities. Poppy and Fenric handled them all, not always successfully, not always cleanly, but with a combination of mortal practicality and magical expertise that proved surprisingly effective. 6 months in, Aldrich summoned them to the palace. Not for a case, for recognition. The crown was officially sanctioning their practice, establishing them as independent contractors the kingdom could call on for specialized situations. You've proven yourself valuable, Aldrich said, handing over the official charter. Both of you, even you, Fenric, despite my better judgment. I'm touched, Your Majesty, truly. Don't be. I'm doing this because you're effective, not because I like you. Aldrich turned to Poppy. The Fae Accords Council has formally dropped their case against Fenric. Turns out documentation of the genocide was more extensive than they wanted to acknowledge. Rather than admit their binding was political, they're claiming he served sufficient time and releasing him from all restrictions. He won? Poppy asked. We won, Fenric corrected. Your defense gave them political cover to change their position. They can claim they're being merciful in response to public opinion rather than admitting fault. He smiled at Aldrich. Well played, using our visibility to force their hand. I have no idea what you're talking about. I simply hired effective contractors. But Aldrich's expression said otherwise. He'd absolutely used their growing reputation to pressure the council, making Fenric too visible and valuable to casually remove. Politics. Poppy was learning to appreciate the game even if she'd never enjoy playing it. The celebration that night was smaller than the first one. Just Poppy and the princesses and Fenric in the palace gardens under stars that seemed closer than usual. So what's next? Arya asked. More impossible cases? More dramatic rescues? Probably, Poppy admitted. Although I'm hoping for fewer trials by Fae Lord. 1 lifetime was enough. Where's the fun in that? Fenric asked. You're at your best when everything's impossible, and you're 5 seconds from disaster. I'm at my best when I'm not about to die, actually. Agree to disagree. They talked late into the night about cases they'd solved, cases they'd failed, the bizarre intersection of mortal law and magical reality that had become Poppy's expertise. Arya wanted to hear every detail. Selena asked thoughtful questions about magical theory. Even Serafina admitted grudging respect for the work they were doing. Later, walking back to the office through empty streets, Fenric spoke quietly. You know, this isn't what I expected when I cursed those princesses. What did you expect? Entertainment, distraction, the same pattern I'd played for 300 years, trap mortals, drain their power, watch them struggle. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't expect one of them to send a cursed girl who'd outsmart me. Didn't expect to lose, or to find that losing might be the most interesting thing that ever happened to me. You're saying I ruined your life. I'm saying you changed it. Not ruined, changed. He looked at her in the moonlight. You gave me freedom when you didn't have to. Defended me when it was dangerous. Partnered with me when it was probably stupid. Why? Poppy considered the question. Because you reminded me of myself. Trapped by other people's decisions, forced into a role you didn't choose, punished for things that were more complicated than simple good and evil. I saw that and thought, if he can be more than what they made him, maybe I can too. And can you be more than what they made you? I'm trying. Every day I wake up and choose what I am instead of accepting what someone else decided. That's freedom. Not perfect, not always successful, but mine. She smiled at him. Same as you. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, partners in impossibility, two people who'd been broken by the world and put themselves back together in ways that made sense only to them. The sign above their office door creaked in the night breeze, promising solutions to unusual problems. Inside, cases waited: a cursed merchant, a stolen child, a plague of prophetic dreams that were driving a village mad. Impossible problems that would require unconventional solutions. Exactly the kind of challenges Poppy had been surviving her entire life. She unlocked the door, stepping into the space she'd built through choice and stubbornness and refusal to accept that she deserved less than freedom. Fenric followed, already pulling out books for tomorrow's research. This was her life now. Not perfect, not safe, definitely not what anyone had expected for the cursed girl from Thornwick, but it was hers, built on her terms, defined by her choices, belonging to no one but herself. The world had called her monster, tried to destroy her, cursed her into something feared and rejected. She'd survived all of it and built something better from the ruins. Not a fairy tale ending. Real life didn't work that way. But a beginning of partnership, purpose, and the freedom to choose her own path forward. And for Poppy Thornwick, who'd spent most of her life fighting just to survive, that was more than enough. That was everything.